bus stop here and I'm Baijayant. On the program tonight, this was a weekend of paradoxes. This was a weekend where an irony was driven home. Look at these twin images, twin realities of India. On the one hand, we won as a country, as a people against the wrath of nature. On the other hand, we lost more than 100 lives to a man-made tragedy in Madhya Pradesh. So on the one hand, you had a moment of pride in Orissa and a moment of shame in Madhya Pradesh. Over 9 lakh lives were saved from the wrath of the cyclone, but 100 people still had to die because of incompetence and mismanagement at this tragic temple stampede in the heartland of India. And of course, when there's tragedy and when there's election, can petty politics be far behind? The Congress is blaming the Madhya Pradesh government, demanding the resignation of its chief minister. It's taking credit though for the lives saved in Orissa without a single mention of Naveen Patnaik. On the program today, coming up in just a moment, a tragedy called politics. Who's responsible for the fact that politics is now not even leaving the dead alone? That's coming up on the program tonight.
ये पूरी जवाबदारी और जिम्मेदारी भारतीय जनता पार्टी की सरकार पर है। अधिकारियों और कर्मचारियों के भ्रष्टाचार की वजह से सब हुआ है, जिनको की पूरी तरह से मुख्यमंत्री और उनके मंत्रिमंडल के सदस्यों का पूरा संरक्षण है।
Also coming up later on the buck stops here tonight, we'll be joined by Pakistan's former ambassador to the United States of America, who's asking for Washington and Islamabad to divorce, talking about their dysfunctional relationship to us in the studio. Let's get started now with our top story tonight. The tragedy in Madhya Pradesh is still unfolding. More than 100 lives have been lost. This tragedy, of course, erupted on the same day that for once the system could pat itself on the back and say, a job well done. Thanks to an extremely efficient evacuation of lakhs of people, making it perhaps the single largest movement of human beings in 24 hours, the Orissa government was well placed in deriving satisfaction from the fact that it was more or less able to kill the impact of the cyclone. But elsewhere in Madhya Pradesh, if nature's wrath had been fought by India, a man-made tragedy was taking its toll. The tragedy now is being compounded by the tragedy of politics.
25-member Kushwaha family from Zakoria village had come to Ratangarh temple on Sunday to offer prayers to the goddess on Navami. The family had no idea what was in store for them. 4 members of the family were killed in the stampede and 10 sustained serious injuries.
कितने लोग थे और उस समय कहाँ पे थे? पुल पे थे?
हाँ सर, पुल पे थे हम।
तो कैसे जान बचाई अपनी?
सर हम उस ग्रिल के करके आ गए, उसी से फिर कुछ लोग हमारे दब चुके थे, फिर हम साड़ी लेकर नीचे उतरे, फिर साड़ी ले गए, फिर हमने खींचा चढ़कर, फिर हम इन्हें भी साड़ी से पकड़कर लेकर नीचे आए, वो बच्ची को भी।
Mangal's wife Asha is shattered. She lost her 2-year-old son in the stampede. Survivors allege that it was the police that spread the rumors that the bridge was about to collapse.
On this bridge on Sunday morning, over 109 people lost their lives and 82 got injured in the stampede, which has now become a major embarrassment for the Madhya Pradesh government and the administration.
Government help to the survivors came too late. Many victims had to hire their own ambulance to reach the hospital.
आप लोग फिर अस्पताल तक कैसे आए? इतने सारे लोग घायल थे, 4 मर गए, आपके कैसे आए आप लोग?
अपनी व्यवस्था से आए।
पुलिस ने मदद नहीं करी?
नहीं, कोई मदद नहीं। वहाँ तो 2 घंटे बाद 3 घंटे बाद पुलिस पहुंची है।
But the grief of the victims does not stop our politicians from indulging in a petty blame game.
कि मध्य प्रदेश को भी देखना चाहिए कि किस तरह से उनकी जनता भी सुरक्षित हो। हमने तो लाखों लोगों को सुरक्षित किया, लेकिन ये 50 लोगों को भी सुरक्षित नहीं कर पाए।
Not just carelessness, the opposition Congress is also accusing the BJP government of corruption.
200 रुपए लेकर नो एंट्री जोन में जाने की इजाजत दी, जिसकी वजह से घटना हुई है। दोषी व्यक्तियों के खिलाफ तत्काल कार्रवाई होना चाहिए।
The BJP put the allegations down to cheap politics.
With the Madhya Pradesh government responding in time, for the Congress to go on having their usual glib talk in order to point towards some direction or to perform a duty without looking at the fundamentals of what went wrong there is typical of the Congress.
But the state BJP spokesperson himself admitted to lapses.
कहीं ना कोई त्रुटि हुई है, चूक हुई है, और मैंने माननीय मुख्यमंत्री से अनुरोध भी किया है कि इसके ऊपर ध्यान देना चाहिए।
Despite the tragedy, 8,000 people visited the temple today. In India, life and politics just go on. With Siddharth Ranjan Das in Datia, Rohit Rajan for NDTV.
And now let's take you to our political punch tonight. Is this a tragedy that's being compounded by the tragedy of politics? The Congress wants to take the credit in Odisha while demanding the resignation of the Chief Minister in Madhya Pradesh. Is this the politics over dead bodies and lives saved? Let's introduce a panel this evening. With us in the studio, senior leader of the Congress party, also someone who's been two-time Chief Minister of Madhya Pradesh, Digvijay Singh. Also with us in the studio, Nirmala Sitharaman. She's of course a senior leader and spokesperson for the BJP. Joining us tonight from Bhubaneswar, somebody who can actually derive some genuine satisfaction at the lakhs of lives saved, is Panda of the Biju Janata Dal. Let me start with you, Digvijay Singh. Some would say this is a moment of national grieving, at least what's happened in Madhya Pradesh. The BJP is right to say that this was a national disaster what happened, and after all it's not the first time this has happened. 1,000 lives in India have been lost in the last 10 years in similar temple tragedies. Was this the moment for the Congress to jump on literally the graves of people and say, Chief Minister resign, while patting yourself on the back for Odisha?
First of all, let me compliment the Indian Meteorological Department for correctly predicting the cyclone, the intensity of cyclone and the direction of cyclone, and also compliment the government of Odisha and Andhra Pradesh for taking all precautionary measures which should have been taken. At the same time, the Disaster Management Authority also, which has done an excellent work. Yeah. So first of all, let me compliment all three.
I think we all agree with that.
Absolutely. As far as the Ratangarh Mata Mandir tragedy is concerned, yes, it is very unfortunate that what happened in 2006, the administration didn't learn from that. Earlier also, from the upstream dam, water was suddenly released. This is a temple which I've been there a number of times. Yeah, let's play you those images of the temple while you talk about it. It's in remote jungle. Yeah. And this was one place where all the dacoits at one time used to come and sort of meet and whatever the thing was. Yeah, it's in the Chambal, broad Chambal belt. Yeah. It's between Sindh and Chambal. Yeah. But it has these ravines. You see, two things. When lakhs of people come in, the whole administration is usually geared up so that the movement of traffic, the movement of pilgrims, because it's a very congested sort of a climb up, that should have been taken. But during this period, during that day, yesterday, the collector was on leave, the SDOP was not there, the SP was not there, and there were only 12 constables who were there. Because of the restricted traffic on the bridge, yes, the tractors and the vehicle traffic was stopped over 4 kilometers away. Yeah. But you have alleged the tractors were asked to pay money. Yeah, absolutely. 200 rupees for each tractor or vehicle they were allowed to go, and there was a congestion at the bridge. So who do you blame for this? The administration. Total lack of governance and total lack of administration. Is this the time to be saying should the Chief Minister resign? And I ask that because there have been similar temple tragedies as we know. Maharashtra, Nashik, 2003. Sushil Kumar Shinde was in my own tenure. Let me confess, during my own tenure in Mahakal temple in Ujjain, we had this unfortunate thing. But that was an accident. It was not a lack of administrative sort of Why ask the Chief Minister to resign? Is this the time that you should be talking about? I have not. When Kapil Sibal says that we have saved lakhs of lives and they have not even saved 50. You know Kapil better than me. So you don't agree with this statement? I don't disagree. And you don't think that, you don't back your party's demand that the Chief Minister should resign? No, I think this is, there is no need for his resignation, because as it is, he's going to lose his job. That's another way of putting politics. So Nirmala Sitharaman, Digvijay Singh carefully disassociates himself a little bit from his colleague Kapil Sibal's statement, says he personally is not asking for the Chief Minister's resignation, but does point to what do look like very serious administrative lapses. Serious enough
for the Chief Minister himself to take action against several of these local officials who have since been suspended. Since the BJP has always held that on the national stage it is your job to criticize the government when they do something wrong, does that same privilege not extend to the Congress party where they are in opposition and you are in power?
Nobody denies the Congress that privilege. Please let them have it.
Yes.
But let us understand the context. There is an election which is already announced.
Yes.
And I'm not trying to save the political executive from its responsibility. But let's not forget, during a time when the code of conduct is already prevalent, it is the permanent executive which runs the administration for all practical reasons, and the political executive will get going with basics of doing something and will be engaged in its electoral campaign.
Okay.
Now in that kind of an environment, if the district administration led by the district collector has failed in giving that kind of a, arrangements, yes, they have to be pulled up, and that's why the Chief Minister has immediately ordered for a magisterial inquiry and also said the entire Thana is suspended. An entire set of officials, the SDOP and the DM, the SP, all of them are, the Election Commission has already been given a, a request that they should be suspended. Even more, the point about 2006 and lessons learned from that kind of
50
incident.
people died in that stampede. That's when this bridge was built.
That's exactly right. And at that time, Shivrajji, who was the Chief Minister, has definitely learnt a lot of lessons out of it, and that is why the roads were laid, permanent bridge was constructed. At that time, the accident happened because of a boat tragedy. But the bridges were constructed, roads were laid, clear, pathway for the mandir were all built post 2006. To say that the government has not learnt any lesson,
what
I think
is the accountability of the Shivraj Singh Chauhan government?
That's exactly where.
What do you believe is the accountability?
That's exactly where the magisterial inquiry will have to fix the responsibility, given the fact that it is an electoral environment. Just look at it from the other side. Suppose the district in charge minister, the chief minister, or anybody else would have been present there, won't all of us also say, oh, you wanted to come and campaign during this campaign, this crowd during, a faith-related gathering, it is unfair? Won't we say that?
Like we just saying before I said that to Panda, is that valid? That they're damned if they do and they're damned if they don't?
See, Barkha, I think she's a little off the mark.
Because?
Because, first of all, the administration has to ensure safety to all the pilgrims. Everyone knew that it draws huge crowds, lakhs of people. Even after this incident today also there are more than 100,000 people at that place. Therefore, the Chandrasekhar Solanki is a SP of Datia, a close confidant of Mr. Narottam Mishra. Huge number of complaints against him of corruption, nepotism and all kinds, which I can't speak on in front of you. And Mr. Narottam Mishra has been protecting him all these days. I would say that he is a henchman. He's become a henchman of Narottam Mishra, the local minister. And he did not even sort of send his SDOP to manage this. He should have been there at the spot.
So when you say, when you say, Jay is waiting, so quickly, if you want to
very quickly, we've said the Chief Minister has responded very much in time, well in time, spontaneously, and also taken the corrective steps immediately.
Okay.
When?
And
2006.
No, by ordering a magisterial inquiry now, and also about 2006, I've already said the corrective measures have been taken, steps have been taken to make it better place to go for crowds and other things. But the fact remains, I want to ask of the Congress, the government, the Chief Minister are taking the necessary steps. You may find them wanting. We are looking at an environment where the election is announced. But what prompts the Congress to immediately tell us all the conspiracy theories?
What conspiracy?
Which is what they did during Chhattisgarh and which is what they're doing now. And that's where the privilege that you spoke about for the opposition to, criticize the government doesn't stop at criticism.
Okay, I'm just going to
the kind of conspiracy theories which are coming out of the Congress is absolutely irresponsible.
Okay, is it
Nirmala, where is the conspiracy? I have not said conspiracy.
No. You and many others have said trucks were given money. Some BJP minister was going there, and therefore, the path was cleared. All this came from the Congress.
This has come on NDTV that people have alleged that the policemen were taking money and allowing vehicles to
This
go.
is eyewitnesses. This is what people are
It's
saying.
not a conspiracy.
This is what people are saying.
Congress
Nirmala.
ministers there and also Congress party leaders from Madhya Pradesh have been generating this spin that, you know, there was a minister was going and they cleared the rasta, and because of that the policemen did.
Kamalnath did take a statement. Okay. All right. Let's just, before we, Jay has been listening to the Congress and the BJP spar here in the studio. This is what Kapil Sibal said. There's a larger narrative building here. There's credit being taken in Orissa, blame being a portion in Madhya Pradesh. Listen to what Kapil Sibal said.
यही तो मैं कह रहा हूं कि मध्य प्रदेश को भी देखना चाहिए कि किस तरह से उनकी जनता भी सुरक्षित हो। हमने तो लाखों लोगों को सुरक्षित किया, लेकिन ये 50 लोगों को भी सुरक्षित नहीं कर पाए।
All right, Jay Panda, let's bring you in. You saw a lot of credit coming from a cynical country, from cynical people over the weekend. Many people giving credit not just to the Met Department but also to your government in Orissa for that extraordinary large-scale evacuation of people that has saved lakhs of lives. Today, 3 press statements from the Congress taking the credit for this, giving some credit to the weather department, some credit to the chief secretary of your state, none to the Naveen Patnaik government. Very strong words for Madhya Pradesh. You're disagreeing with your party again?
I've given them the credit.
You are giving them the credit.
Absolutely.
So once again, you're not actually saying what your party.
No, it's not that. It's not that. It's the government which matters.
Okay.
In state.
We'll get you
Chief
to come in
Secretary
there.
or Chief Minister is different.
I'll get you to come in there. Jay Panda, go ahead. When you see the politics that has erupted in on the morning after, are you taken aback? Does it in some ways undo all the lessons that we said or we thought we had learnt yesterday?
Barkha, first of all, I want to say that I have also seen in some quarters an unseemly scramble for who ought to get the credit.
Yeah.
I don't wish to participate in that. I think ultimately the people of Orissa will decide for themselves what happened. I certainly think the national agencies who participated deserve their share of the credit.
Yes.
The Met Department, the Defence Forces for keeping helicopters and personnel ready, National Rapid Action Forces also who sent their Jawans. But I want to point out that all these resources are available to every state of the country, and yet you have seen differential performance in different states. Now, I again don't want to comment about other states because you could have different types of calamities, and I don't have enough knowledge about other states. But I can certainly comment about Odisha. The same Met Department in 1999 had given us 3 to 4 days advance notice of the super cyclone.
Yes.
And yet we had more than 10,000 people killed, and we had nothing of the kind of preparations that we saw now. I want to make 2 quick points here. Clearly, the single biggest reason for containing the casualties was this enormous evacuation which took place, which was entirely by the state government.
Yes.
But the central government authorities' contribution has started immediately after the cyclone. The National Rapid Action Force Jawans were involved in clearing the roads. The Air Force is involved in running relief operations. Their help has started immediately after the cyclone has passed. And the other point I wish to make is that this success that you see in Odisha in preparations and containing the casualties is not out of the blue, has not suddenly happened. If you look at the last dozen or 14 years, you will see a steady upward graph of improving competence. And that is because Chief Minister Naveen Patnaik personally monitors every such calamity, even if it's a minor one, because he learnt lessons in 1999.
Okay.
And in this particular case, as you know, all government leave was cancelled. This enormous evacuation didn't happen with the snap of a finger. It happened with thousands of people working to make sure that it happened.
Now, what I find, and I want to take this back to Digvijay Singh, is that there is some grace in what Jay is saying. He's saying, look, we did some things right, but of course the central government also stepped in. Do you think, and forgive me these strong words, that the Congress has been singularly graceless in issuing 3 press releases that do not make one mention of Naveen Patnaik? If I were the Prime Minister, I would have picked up the phone, called the Chief Minister, said congratulations on a job well done. What more can we do for you? If the PM made such a call, we don't know about it. I'm not saying he didn't, but I don't know that he did. I'm going by the Congress press statements. You're saying you would give Naveen Patnaik credit. Why are you today sounding a little bit different from your party, both on Madhya Pradesh and Odisha? I mean, it's not for the first time, but...
Barkha, let me tell you few points. First of all, let us give first credit to the IMD.
We all do.
One.
Yes.
Correctly predicting. Even the Americans faltered on that.
Yes.
Number one. Number two, let us not say whether it's Naveen Patnaik or the Chief Secretary, whether it's, that's not the issue. The issue is the state government of Odisha responded correctly also, and so did government of Andhra Pradesh also. They responded correctly. Number three, you are missing another point. Disaster Management Authority has been created by the UPA government, and there has been consistent training of the state officials over the years. So there were the responsive, I would say, the responsive environment that's been built up in the system of the state governments. That has also contributed to this, because district level officers have been trained by Disaster Management Authority over the years.
So you're saying the entire system responded better?
Absolutely. This is what I'm trying to say.
So it's not this party or that party or this government or that government.
I'm not giving credit or discredit to anyone. What I'm trying to say is that we have learned from our mistakes, and therefore the IMDs correctly forecasting the cyclone. Number two, the Disaster Management Authority overall managing the whole thing, and the state governments responding to the issue, to the evacuation and other relief measures.
So then my question to you, Nirmala, would be that why could this not have been a moment of actually no politicking, no political bickering, no political one-upmanship, just that the people of this country could finally feel the system works? Had it not been for the tragedy in Madhya Pradesh, which was of course a very ironic reminder that we fought nature but we couldn't find this man-made mishap. But do you agree with what Digvijay Singh is saying, that it was a sign that the entire system worked?
Well, of course, otherwise, cyclones have been happening in this country for years now, decades now, centuries now.
But the press statements today from the Congress party?
Well, you've made enough comment on it, much to my surprise. I wouldn't want to add.
I can surprise you yet.
And therefore,
yes.
I don't want to add to it. I certainly do. I mean, if for a minute I'm allowed, without being accused that I'm doing a tutu meme here, certainly Orissa government and the steps that they've taken, we can easily, readily say that. In fact, I was one of the earliest to say I heave a sigh of relief for the wonderful work which has happened, but only the greatest grave grief is about Madhya Pradesh. And that, in spite of the Chief Minister there having learnt lessons from 2006 and being in an election-related environment, where the political executive can only go that far and not any further. It is for the permanent executive to take, enough and adequate steps. Let me add here, between 2006 until today, every year this happens. Did you have a problem? Wasn't Shivraj Singh Chauhan then the Chief Minister? Wasn't he the Chief Minister last year? It didn't happen last year. He took all the adequate steps also last year, the year before that. So, when it has happened, and when it has happened during an election time, let us be realistic, just as we have to be realistic to understand the steps taken by the Orissa government and not usurp everything from there. Let us also not throw blame here where there is a peculiar environment of election.
Let me just bring in Jay before I take that back to Mr. Digvijay Singh. Jay Panda, you wrote a long piece today in Indian Express about the lessons that we have learnt on disaster management. Yet we are a country where 1,000 people have died in the last 10 years in temple stampedes alone. In Madhya Pradesh, at this very place in 2006, 50 people died. And we can keep tabulating. This has been happening in every state. This is not specific to a state. This is not specific to a chief minister. What happens when politics overtakes the discourse as it has now in Madhya Pradesh? And some would say even in Odisha.
Well, we are a country where I think politics seems to seep into all kinds of normal discourse. But crowd management issues are quite different from natural calamity issues. If at all we compare anything that, I have any experience of, it is the annual Jagannath Rath Yatra in Puri, where about 10 lakh people gather on one street. And there also, although we occasionally have a few casualties, it is extremely limited in number because of preparations that are done starting 2 months or even longer ahead of the event. So I think it's a question of systemic capability, and it is also a question of political will starting from the very top. And I think we need to see upgradation of both in India, in systemic capability, dealing with crowd management, dealing with natural disasters.
Okay. Digvijay Singh, let's take it back to what Nirmala Sitharaman raised. When you said you hold the local administration responsible, when you said on Twitter that people were asked to pay 200 rupees to let the tractors go through, there have been some even more dire eyewitness claims that have come that we've not been able to independently corroborate the role of the police. Some have alleged that bodies were hurled down from the bridge. Only a magisterial inquiry will address some of these questions. Do you then hold the Chief Minister personally accountable? And if you do, then you must answer the BJP's question that why have you never held a Congress Chief Minister in the past accountable for similar tragedies?
Barkha, first of all, let me put it on record. I totally agree with what Jay has said, that crowd management is an issue with the administration. And there are hundreds of instances and procedures where certain steps are taken for crowd management. Now, election or no election is not an issue. It is the systems and it is the governance which it continues.
And where do you believe the governance lapse took place, according to you?
Because the district magistrate was on leave, SP had not delegated, had not really managed the whole arrangement. The SDOP was missing. There are only 12 constables present. I checked up myself. I spoke to the senior police officers.
12 constables?
Only to manage a crowd of more than 100,000 people. And it's on camera now.
Yes.
People have accepted the fact which I alleged, that the constables were taking money to allow the vehicles to go to no traffic zone. The point I'm trying to make is...
So who is accountable?
Accountable is the administration.
Not the Chief Minister.
The Chief Minister, of course, is what he is. I need not comment on that. You will again say I'm politicizing the whole issue. But the fact
hasn't the Congress, hasn't your party politicized it already? When Ajay Makan calls a press conference and says the Chief Minister must resign, what is that but politicization?
The fact remains, Barkha, in Madhya Pradesh, district magistrates and district SPs have been posted after taking money. And when these officers give bribe to get postings, naturally down the line, the SDOP, the Thanedars, all this, they have to collect money. And this is what is the failure of this of this capacity.
Nirmala, respond to that. That election, the announcement of poll dates does not stop the business of governance. That if there were 12 police constables for 100,000 people, that is a serious administrative lapse.
This is exactly what the magisterial inquiry is going to establish.
What about moral responsibility?
No, wait a minute.
Oh no,
we've had this kind of a debate on every issue. Immediately moral, you know.
If this were a Congress Chief Minister in Madhya Pradesh, what would the BJP say?
I'll still say, election time, you will not be permitting any of the political leadership to be present in large gatherings, and you'll accuse us of it. I asked you a counter question. In the last 6 years, after 2006, every year, did anything happen at all?
Digvijay Singh, take that question.
And again, after the inquiry has been announced, we are hearing different kinds of theories coming out. Money was taken by police officers and therefore police constables, and therefore our ministers were coming, the traffic was being cleared, therefore I think this is absolutely irresponsible.
But let me ask you, before I put that to Digvijay Singh, is there a moral risk accountability of the state government?
Wait a minute. If these allegations or the spin doctors were generating these theories...
These are eyewitness accounts. These are what people on the ground are saying, not spin doctors.
Barkha, I can understand your enthusiasm in wanting to establish a point of view. But I am trying to tell you here that when there is a magisterial inquiry, and when inclusive of media, if they have first-hand accounts of what is happening there, I would think as responsible citizens, all of us should only go to the inquiry and state it there rather than, you know, establish it as though it is already proven. That is the job of the inquiry and not any one of us.
Respond to Nirmala Sitharaman's point that because there is a code of conduct now in place, they could not have had a larger bandobast there.
And last year, the year before that, was there a problem?
First of all, Barkha, there is a difference between judicial inquiry and magisterial inquiry. There is a judicial inquiry.
Nitpicking again.
A judicial inquiry is different from magisterial inquiry.
Nitpicking again.
No, this is a fact. You know,
so what? Inquiry by magistrate is no less.
Okay, you continue. Same.
But stating something like that is unfair. You've been a chief minister.
That's what I'm saying. There's difference between magisterial inquiry and judicial inquiry. Magisterial inquiry is done by a magistrate, and judicial inquiry is done by a sitting judge.
What is the qualitative difference?
Thank you. I learned something.
So judicial inquiry is conducted by a sitting judge or retired judge, not by an executive officer like a magistrate inquiry.
But to her point, that a larger bandobast was broken.
You see, there is no difference at the moment. The administration is not conducting an election. So at this point of time, the whole administration is not involved in elections. The whole administration is involved in governance. The point she is missing is that why only 12 constables were present for bandobast to control crowd of more than 100,000 people is an issue. What was the SP doing? Why the SP continued to remain as SP of Datia? Because he was acting as a henchman of the minister in charge, Narottam Mishra. That is the issue.
So it's a political issue. Yeah, quickly, and then I'll give Jay the last
No,
word.
but
Yeah.
Somebody is the henchman of somebody else. These are things which have to be established. And if this incident hadn't happened, that henchman continuing there wouldn't have been an issue for Mr. Digvijay Singh. So all this is, you know, extension of an argument which is just a spin doctoring of the whole affair. Now, since Congress doesn't seem to want to even take one step backwards, in spite of the environment of election being there, I'll just then go to Uttarakhand. A cloud burst is very difficult to be predicted, agreed.
Yeah.
But post that, till today, what is happening? What is happening in Uttarakhand? How many people are still telling us the administration has not even reached the village doorstep?
Okay,
so can we talk about it?
Valid question. Digvijay Singh and Jay gets the last word. You take credit in Odisha, you take no blame in Uttarakhand. The Congress is coming across as the one starting the politics.
Again, Barkha, I don't know why you're putting words in my mouth.
No, not you, Digvijay Singh. You
have called me as Digvijay Singh, not as a spokesperson of the Congress party.
Fair enough.
So therefore, what I'm trying to say is that I'm giving credit to the system, the government.
Yeah.
The government of India, IMD, the government of Odisha, the government of Andhra Pradesh, all three worked as a team, and you could they could avert a major disaster.
Okay, I think no one could disagree with that formulation. And you're saying you do not necessarily agree with some of the statements you've heard from your party colleagues today. Jay Panda, you get the last word. Politics literally till the grave. I mean, that's what worries me about how many lessons we really are going to learn about disaster management.
I think the Indian people should not be underestimated. They see through the politics, and I think they can judge very well for themselves. As far as Odisha is concerned, I would like to compliment the contribution of the national agencies like the Met Department and the Rapid Action Force and the Defence Forces. I just wish that their services would be equally availed of by all states, which we have not seen uniformly happen. And I think a new benchmark has been set in Odisha by the evacuation and by all the other steps that were taken.
Okay.
And I think the people of India throughout the country will now expect higher standards.
I think it's higher standards if we have to aspire to. We leave it there. Many lessons need to be learned. A tragedy like that happened in Madhya Pradesh, for example, should not happen anywhere again in India. We wish the BJP and the Congress and other parties would come together to try and reach some consensus in moments of tragedy like this. We leave it there. Digvijay Singh, Nirmala Sitharaman, Jay Panda, thanks for joining us on the Buck Stops here. We're taking a quick break. Up next, the former Pakistani ambassador to the United States of America, Hussein Haqqani, is arguing for a divorce between Washington and Islamabad. He'll join us next. You're watching the Buck Stops here. Let's turn our focus to what's happening in Jammu and Kashmir. There has been another violation at the border, this time in the area of Samba. Let's go across straight to my colleague Zafar Iqbal. These are the shots you're seeing of the injured Jawan. And what is important about this is over the last 3 months, the LOC, the line of control, has been volatile. There have been more than 150 ceasefire violations in the last 2 months alone. Samba is, of course, at the international border, not at the LOC, not an area where you typically see this kind of firing, at least not since the 2003 ceasefire. But we are seeing aberrations. There's something strange going on, something not completely explained yet, which is unfolding at the border and at the line of control. Zafar, what are the details?
Well, about this incident, it was a case of sniping fire where this BSF Jawan was specifically targeted by the Pakistani troops. This was the border observation post of the BSF, which was at an elevated position on a mount, which was targeted by the Pakistanis, and he took 2 bullets. He received 2 bullets, and afterwards there was massive firing from the Pakistani side. Let me tell you, BSF sources are telling us that there is clearly a pattern to this. This is the 4th such case of sniping fire from Pakistan in this year alone. and also we've seen escalation on the line of control at many places. But now what's emerged is that the Pakistanis are also targeting the international border, and that's why the GOC of the 16th Corps, Lieutenant General D.S. Huda, said today that there are specific inputs that infiltrators are targeting the international border. Just last month there was this massive infiltration bid in Samba. The infiltrators in fact managed to cross over into the Indian territory, and 10 people were killed in the encounter that followed. So there are specific inputs that militants are trying to target the international border. Now the reason is because snow will block the passes once the winter sets in, and it's easier for them perhaps to cross from the international border, and those are the worries that the security agencies have here.
Zafar Iqbal joining us from Jammu and Kashmir tonight. As a Jawan is injured in firing across the international border. We've also seen the LOC extremely volatile in the last 2 months. Now let's turn our focus to what the army chief has said. He's saying this could only get worse as American troops pull out from Afghanistan. That brings us to our newsmaker tonight. He is the author of a new book, Magnificent Delusions. This is Hussain Haqqani. He's of course been Pakistan's ambassador to the United States of America, somebody who's been observing that equation as well as the India-Pakistan equation. He's been an advisor to 4 different Pakistani prime ministers, and he's our newsmaker tonight. With us in the studio, Hussain Haqqani. I know we are going to talk a little bit about United States and Pakistan, which is what your book deals with. But when we look at what's happening at the line of control, when we look at the non-starter meeting between Nawaz Sharif and Manmohan Singh in New York, a meeting I covered, since then I've been at the line of control as well, Hussain. There is something going on that is atypical. And why I call it atypical is that the 2003 ceasefire has pretty much held between the two countries despite some aberrations. What we're seeing this year, some people in India believe is a tussle between Nawaz Sharif and the Pakistani military. The Pakistani military asserting its might against a prime minister who openly declared that he was the boss, not the army chief. What is going on exactly?
Barkha, I'm a little at a distance from Pakistan, as you know.
You can't go back.
But I'm happy. Well, I think I can go back in legal terms, but my life would be in danger, and so therefore it's more advisable for me for the moment to speak from outside, because I do want the contending vision for Pakistan that I articulate to continue to be articulated. I have always said, whether I was in government or outside, that the jihadi menace in Pakistan will only escalate unless and until the state puts its foot down. And the jihadis want nothing better than the escalation of tensions between India and Pakistan.
But what's happening at the line of control is not just the jihadis. It cannot happen without the Pakistani military.
But I want you to understand that when I use the term jihadis, I do not just mean the individuals who are members of jihadi militant outfits. I mean jihadi as a mindset. The mindset is within the Pakistani establishment, it's within the Pakistani political class, it's even within the Pakistani media, who every now and then, as you know, uses every opportunity to try and escalate the tensions whenever the opportunity of bringing down tensions comes about.
Can I just ask you to elaborate on that? You say when you use the word jihadi, you don't just refer to jihadi groups as we know them. You're not just talking about the Jaish-e-Mohammed and the Lashkar-e-Taiba and so on. You are talking about an attitude, and you are saying that there could be hardliners in the Pakistan army or the ISI that have that attitude and that do not want to see a peace process take off between India and Pakistan.
Let me just say that there are people in Pakistan in all branches of government, outside of government, in the political sphere. Just as I must say, there are certain hardliners in India, but in Pakistan the hardliners
I don't think we have a jihadi attitude here.
That's true. But there are people in Pakistan who believe that India is an existential enemy. Now you know that for many years I have made the argument that the concept of an existential enemy is not a concept of modern international relations. Germany and France, after fighting for a long time, they do business with one another. Their border issues are hardly relevant anymore because of the European Union. The United States and Canada have 9 outstanding disputes, including border demarcation, border in the sea, etc., etc. All those issues are still outstanding, and they do business with one another.
Let me ask you something before we turn to your book. Where is the Pakistan military today? General Kiani is not being given an extension by Nawaz Sharif, the best we know. Yet he has a few days left in office. Do you believe what's happening at the line of control, the fact that it is so volatile again, is at least one manifestation of an internal power tussle going on between the civilian and the military establishment of Pakistan?
Now, since I'm here primarily to promote my book, let me just connect this to my book.
Connect it, because there's an Afghanistan angle as well.
My first book was about, it was titled Pakistan Between Mosque and Military. It explained how the Pakistani military had used militancy as an ideological and philosophical tool to advance a strategic objective. This is about the US-Pakistan relationship. I will also one day research the India-Pakistan relationship in great detail and point one thing out. The problem is that this is not about individual generals. Sometimes people take it wrongly. They say this is about transition between officers, etc., etc. And on many an occasion, the problems that come about when you have ideology inserted into the equation between nations, then a lieutenant or a captain who's on the border can actually act on his own, as happened in 1948, as documents now prove. So the British were the commanders of Pakistan's military. They didn't want to do certain things.
I'll tell you why I'm asking you.
And all these things, now let me just say, as a Pakistani, and a Pakistani who worries about Pakistan, these things worry me. Why do they worry me? I think that 21st century requires modern statecraft, not this ideological philosophizing and pontificating that allows individuals to subvert larger initiatives of the state.
Here's the point. The US-Pakistan relationship is directly connected.
Absolutely.
It's directly connected to the India-Pakistan relationship. There's no divorcing those two. I don't believe we can go on saying they've been dehyphenated, these relationships, but one has a bearing on the other. And I'll give you an example. When Manmohan Singh meets Barack Obama in Washington, one of the things that Obama comes out and says is that the Lashkar-e-Taiba is a worldwide threat. That's the phrase he uses. The Jamaat-ud-Dawa's funding is discussed between the Indian leader and the American president at the White House. So these are not things that
nothing is disconnected from one another. For one thing, this is a globalized environment, and nothing is disconnected from one another, even in other spheres, let alone this one. And those of your viewers who will read this book, and the book is being released on the 5th of November here in India as well as around the world. The full title is Magnificent Delusions, Pakistan, the United States, and an epic history of misunderstanding. And what's the misunderstanding? The misunderstanding is that Americans always thought that by supporting Pakistan militarily, they are bringing stability eventually. Instead, what they have done is they have contributed to Pakistan's dysfunction and the dysfunction in the India-Pakistan relationship.
You know, that could as easily sound the story of the Americans in Afghanistan.
Well, Americans, of course, I mean, there are comments on them as well, and it was my opportunity to point out that I'm not pro-US, I'm pro-Pakistan, but I want to look at history as it is rather than as I'd like to see it. And the Americans sometimes can be naive in their approach to the rest of the world. They assume that they can actually just bring in their resources, and on the basis of their resources they can change the local politics and local philosophy.
What's the single biggest misreading or misunderstanding that Americans have made about Pakistan?
Well, the biggest misunderstanding was that Pakistan would, within a couple of years of feeling that Pakistan felt insecure after partition, which was understandable, but that if they build up Pakistan's military, and you must remember that at the time of partition, Pakistan got 17% of British India's resources, but 33% of British India's military. So Pakistan did not have the resources to sustain a large military. The Americans came in thinking that Pakistan is going to provide them troops for war in Korea and Vietnam and Laos, which Pakistan never did. But in the process, they built up the Pakistani military, which then enabled Pakistani hardliners to continue and persist with the idea of conflict with India. Otherwise, early 50s, there were Pakistani leaders like Hussain Shahid Sohrawardi who were willing to actually sit down with Indian leaders and have a realistic assessment of the two countries' needs and open trade and move forward.
You've also spoken about how this India-focused nationalism, as it were, or the narrative
hyper-nationalism. I'm a nationalist, they are hyper-nationalists.
The narrative of an India-focused hyper-nationalism has also, in a sense, found an odd conflation with the kind of Islamist politics.
Absolutely.
How has that happened? Why does being nationalistic conflate with being fundamentalist?
Well, What happened in case of Pakistan was that after independence there were two paths for Pakistan. One was a federal democratic system in which East Pakistan, which was predominantly Bengali, largest number of Pakistanis, Punjabis who were the largest in West Pakistan, Sindhis, Baluch, all of us would have our own rights, and under the constitution we would be able to function as a normal democracy like anywhere else. India had its constitution in 2 years after independence. It had its first election 2 years after the constitution. So 47 independence, 49 constitution, 51 first election. Pakistan did not get a constitution till 1956, and then that constitution was thwarted within 2 years by the military. Having a larger military than your resource base basically just skewed everything, and it all became about justifying the militancy. And how do you justify militancy to an impoverished people? By whipping up the rhetoric. By working up the rhetoric and ideology. And Pakistan, instead of being declared a democratic state of the Muslims of the subcontinent, was declared an ideological state which gave an advantage to the Islamists, which advantage they have now parlayed into increasing militancy, which is now consuming Pakistan. Look, you complain about what is happening on the line of control. Let me say that I sympathize with your concerns, but my concern is the hundreds of Pakistanis that get killed by the jihadis.
To which Indians will say it's your state's policy that's done that to yourself.
Well, and to which I would say that they will not stop at killing Shias in Pakistan. Someday they would like to kill Shias in India, they would like to kill Shias in Iran, because it's a mindset. So that is why I always focus on fighting the extremist mindset. I'm a rather happy man that I'm no longer in government, because now I can speak my mind and join the struggle in Pakistan, which will be a struggle both for Pakistan and for the rest of the world, because jihadi extremism will threaten the whole world, not just Pakistan.
Okay, in the end, in one of your talks you say, if in 65 years you haven't been able to find sufficient common ground to live together, and you've had 3 separations and 4 reaffirmations of marriage, then maybe the better way is to find friendship outside of the marital bond. You're talking about US and Pakistan. What's the option? What's the option to this marital bond?
Read the one night stand? Read the book and find out. Absolutely not. I'm saying basically that you need to redefine the relationship. The United States and Pakistan cannot be and are not military allies, because their enemies are different, their objectives are different, and pretending that there is an alliance only enhances Pakistan's dysfunction. Pakistanis either burn Indian flags or they burn American flags.
You in fact quoted a Pew survey that said 3 in 4 Pakistanis dislike America.
Absolutely. And I also
where's
point
the alliance then? But at the same time you're surviving on American aid as a country.
So Pakistan needs to, that's the second part of it. The patriotic Pakistani in me says that Pakistan should stop being dependent on the United States for military reasons, but rather learn to stand on our own feet by befriending our neighbors. Pakistan's concerns about Afghanistan can be addressed by befriending whoever is the government in Afghanistan, and we should have the same approach to India. Look, China has a claim on Taiwan, but China has not fired a single bullet to try and regain Taiwan. In fact, they do business with Taiwan, and they are building up China as a nation. Pakistan is dysfunctional because on the one hand we are a nuclear weapons power, on the other half the children in our country do not go to school, not any kind of school.
And that brings me to my last question, talking about schools. Malala Yousafzai, the fact that somebody as extraordinary as her could be the subject of a divided debate in Pakistan. It's called a Western puppet, a puppet of America. What does that make you feel as a Pakistani?
Well, it makes me feel that Pakistanis need to start thinking for a change instead of just parroting what they are told. Unfortunately, Pakistan has become a victim of its own rhetoric and of its own hyper-nationalist discourse. Pakistanis need to be like other nations of the world, talk about the practical things in the world. The 21st century is not about General Kiani or General Pasha, it's the century of General Electric and General Motors.
We'll leave it there. Hussain Haqqani out with his new book, Magnificent Delusions, looking at the relationship between the United States and Pakistan. Well, that's it on The Buck Stops here tonight. From all of us here, thanks for watching. We'll see you tomorrow night at 9 p.m. Good night.